people are probably waiting on me right now to answer and open an email. I'm not silly. I understand that. But balance for me is where you go to bed every single day and you're like, I think I did everything right today. And it's this very hard thing to being open and honest and self-critical without beating yourself up. And so to me, balance is giving yourself an honest answer of, are you doing everything you can? And really kind of giving yep, you know what, I'm doing my job. I'm doing everything I can. And I think that's the definition of balance, because that answer should encapsulate your family. It should encapsulate your physical fitness. It should encapsulate your work. And if you can put your head on the pillow and feel that way, I think you'll find you'll have more restful nights for sure.
Welcome to A Founder's Life. I'm your host, Leo Gestetner. On this show, we dive into the real stories behind the highs and lows of entrepreneurship and how we pursue a more balanced and meaningful life along the way. This podcast is brought to you by Thanks, helping founders like us scale with reliable remote talent. Email founders@thanks.com, that's THANKZ.com, with the subject line A Founder's Life, and you'll receive preferred pricing. Well, I'm excited today to be joined by Charlie Cole. Charlie, thanks for joining. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Sure. Thanks, Leo. Oh, that's a great start. Good to see everybody. I've been doing e-commerce my whole life. Basically, since I was 22, I fell into the world of digital marketing, and the rest is history. And had sort of more non-entrepreneurship roles, let's call them, at places like Lucky Brand and TUMI and Samsonite. And then most recently, I sort of got the technologist bug and have helped run and take over a company called XGen AI, where we leverage generative AI and AI specifically to attack all the various travails of agentic commerce, whether that is optimization of your own brand site, whether that is preparing product feeds and all the things that we're going to need for, AEO, GEO, talking to ChatGPT, whatever it may be. So I guess you could say I'm a late onset entrepreneur. Leo would be the fair description.
Well, you've given us a bit of a flavor there, but give us a little more information on what really your journey was like that brought you to where you are today, and a little more about how your current business is really helping your customers.
So my journey was very much guided by, I guess you could say, fate, if you wanted to sound highfalutin, or accident, if you wanted to sound more realistic. I was a math guy. I love statistics and mathematics all through university, and that was my focus as part of my business studies. And when I got out of college, I was dead set on going to go to law school. Is what I always wanted to do. And I got accepted to go to law school. And then all these various people in my life were saying, hey, you can have what's called a gap year in the US, which is you can take a year off before you go and start your education. And they're like, you should take it. You're going to inform your studies that much more. You'll be that much more prepared. And I spent my gap year as an analyst at a very early stage, realestate.com. I was doing real estate lead generation and selling that to real estate agents. And one of my first kind of impacts was I marched into my boss's office and was like, hey, I know I'm new here. I know this is my first real job, but I really think we should do more of this Google AdWords stuff, right? I don't know what it is, but you asked me to analyze it, and I'm telling you, it's really kind of making all the right signals for our business. And that was sort of where they decided to make me the head of advertising. And then my TV agency called me about a year later, and they were like, hey, why do you keep on cutting our budgets? Like, what's going on? I was like, well, it's the internet. We're selling a bunch more stuff via the internet. It's more efficient. It's more direct. And so moving forward, they asked me to move down to LA and actually start an online division of their agency. And we did that and sold the business. And now I'm in LA and I get to know the CEO of Lucky Brand Jeans, and he asked me to run e-commerce. And I'd never done that before either, right? And so all these things sort of built on each other. And I think that once I was in the world of e-com, that led to more P&L ownership, that led to CEO jobs, et cetera. And when I look back at it, the one thing that I was very happy I did, and maybe this is brutally obvious, is coming out of college, I went directly into a job that my talents lend itself to. I didn't know anything about the industry. I didn't know anything about the internet. I didn't know anything about advertising. I didn't know anything about realestate.coms. But I set myself up to success by really kind of driving one of my core capabilities. But over my, call it 20 years of e-com, I have used, and very early stage used, a lot of technologies that were considered cutting edge at the time. And when I was watching the effects of AI and generative AI, not just on e-commerce, but at the world at large, it became abundantly clear to me that it was going to have a massive impact on our world, and not just in my little e-commerce centric world, but our world at large. But I got to see a couple of practical applications specifically of direct consumer e-commerce and where it was going to make impact. And I sort of made the thesis that the entire e-commerce stack was going to be completely upended, and that we're going to be really thinking about our websites and the internet shopping as a whole in a different way. And that's where XGen has come in. And so we started with very practical, I would call it even simple applications, things like site recommendations, things like online merchandising personalization. And Leo, one of the things that's so hard about this conversation is e-commerce operators have been promised personalization for literally 10 years. And it's largely been smoke and mirrors, or at best, segmentation. And so what AI and generative AI have allowed us to do is specifically start fulfilling these promises of personalization, which to me means personalization is every keystroke, every sale that we have access to that we can link to you as an online user optimizes your journey. And we started with recommendations and personalizations and PLP optimization. We moved into site search, where we've now have the best site search in the entire industry. Things like conversational search, where you can have more of a chat experience online. And now we are really actively talking about what is the plumbing, if you will, that online companies are going to need in this sort of answer engine universe. And so that's a bit more about us in a more precise way.
I think that it's quite some journey.
Yeah, it's been fun.
It's interesting. I think, Amazon probably is I don't know about the pioneer, but certainly the one who is the giant in the room, and does it in a fantastic way in terms of they know what I want. I think it was 10 years ago Amazon got a patent to deliver you goods before you ordered them. They may not have used that yet, but they know enough about you. That's the point. And, it's that love-hate relationship. In some ways you hate the fact that they know way too much about you. On the flip side, it's really quite convenient.
Yeah, and Amazon has they have a lot of advantages, but they have one inherent technical advantage, which is virtually everybody who shops on Amazon, because of how their website is set up and because of how their app is set up, is in a login state. So if you can raise your hand and say, hey, I'm Leo, right? And this is sort of what I've done in the past. This is what I'm doing right now. That gives you a huge advantage to start to personalize that experience. But Leo, you just referenced sort of one of my favorite dichotomies in the online world, which is consumers on one hand love and demand personalized experiences, and consumers at the exact same time are scared to death about their data. And the reality is you can't have one without the other. And the reality is we're all right to be scared about our data. And so how do we, as technologists who are enabling brands, how do brands actually give that personal experience while respecting the data collection in a way that sort of, I think, reinforces this brand health? Because ultimately, how a brand does or doesn't use your data and stores your data in a very safe way is the fuel for all of this stuff we're talking about, for the Amazon experience you're talking about, for the personalization online that I'm talking about. But it is sort of a very kind of like walking contradiction that we all have to live.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of okay with it. Like, I don't use privacy browsers, and I'm sort of okay with the fact that yes, all my data is there, but it also hopefully makes my experience a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm with you for what it's worth. I do everything I can to protect my passwords, and I do everything I can to protect my data. But at the same time, if it's a store that has earned my trust, I'm more than willing to give them access to cookies and CRMs and that sort of things, because frankly, I want them to know what I want.
Yeah, and then you always got the little slightly scary thing when you open an app and somehow it knows that you were talking to somebody about something, which it doesn't really know that, but the same reason you were talking to them about that, you probably looked at it, or you've probably done some search, or the amount of data is always surprising. But I think it's a good thing overall.
And at the risk of sounding a little Orwellian, it's just going to get worse. Because the thing that we really forget is when you talk about AI and when you talk about generative AI and you talk about all like large language models and machine learning and all these buzzy words, behind it, what's powering it is just this baseline computational power that we've never seen before. And so we're going to get that much better at digesting and using all this data, frankly, just because we can process all of these signals and data points in real time in a way that we never have before. And I don't think that's slowing down anytime soon.
I think it's true. It just comes down to what that data gets used for. Do I want it to improve my shopping experience? Yeah, I do. Do I want it to guess what it is I'm browsing for? Sure. There's a reason why most of my searches these days have moved into AI, away from Google. I mean, I use a mix. I use Claude, I use Perplexity, I use ChatGPT, depends what I'm doing. But yes, a lot of searches have moved there. which, for those who don't understand it, is always a bit scary that they don't realize when I'm talking to somebody and they don't realize that the problem with AI is positive bias. Like, you and I will understand that. So that's fine because you take that into account. People who don't understand that, it's always a little scary that they don't understand it's going to give them the answer that it thinks they want, not, which may or may not be the right answer.
It's still not perfect, right? And I think that one of our responsibilities, if you will, and this is a little highfalutin, but one of our responsibilities as a society is to kind of confirm and question and cross-reference sources. But I think, Leo, we can both agree that that happens less and less, right? And so there is this concept of I've had a number of experiences in ChatGPT, a number of experiences of Perplexity, where what they tell you is just absolute wrong and or positioned as fact. And what I love about the internet as a whole is that we are given access to more data at our fingertips than we ever have in our entire life. What I hate about the internet as a whole is that we're given access to data from every which way of the internet, but in our entire life. So what I love is what I hate is the exact same thing. And I think the world of AI, I mean, one of the spookiest statistics I've seen in a long time is the day OpenAI launched ChatGPT, how quickly it was being used for fraud. One of the earliest adopters of ChatGPT as a technology source was people using it for bad. And unfortunately, that's sort of the nature of the internet, is that these technologies unleash all sorts of good, but also unlock all sorts of bad. And I think we are going to be kind of living that give and take over the next 5 to 10 years in a way that we really never have before. Because yes, when HTTPS protocol launched, it started to unlock the ability to use the internet for however you want, including for fraud. However, you still had to have quite a bit of programming expertise to be good at it, or quite a bit of technical panache to be good at it. I mean, Leo, you and I right now could go code a website, even though we never have in our entire life, just by going to talking to the correct answer engine. And so I think we as a human, group need to be very prepared and ready to respond to that.
Yeah, we use AI a lot in my business, and yeah, my developers are developing at probably next the speed they were before they were using AI. So no question.
That lends itself to a whole other series of conversations about what it will do to employment and productivity. But, I'm not sure we have time for that.
I do agree, and you can bury your head in the sand. But the simple fact is, as I said to my developers a couple of months ago, not only will you not have a job with us if you don't embrace AI in a couple of years, you probably won't have a job. Now, if you do embrace AI, you'll be earning 5 times what you are today.
I agree.
I
think that's the right attitude. And I think that's the right attitude. And I've spent most of the last decade working within a private equity construct. And private equity really values its companies and sells its companies on a multiple of EBITDA or profit. And whenever you bring something forward and you say, Leo, let's use your example of 10x, like, hey, we're getting 10x more output from our developers. What a private equity investor is going to hear is one of two things. A, that means we can expect 10x more productivity, or B, that means we need 1/10 the developers. And I think that, again, that might be a very simplistic way of viewing the world. But I think as business leaders, we should all be embracing the productivity, right? While encouraging, and I love what you did, which was encourage your employees to embrace it, to sort of, frankly, benefit themselves. So I love the way you put that.
So talk to us about what family means to you.
It was a question I never really cared that much about in my early 20s, and now it's all I care about at 43. So over the course of my last 7 years, where my daughter is 7.5, my son will be 6 next month. Next year's my 10-year wedding anniversary, which I should say on the air so I don't forget. So my definition of family and the role of family has changed so dramatically. And I'll tell you on a darker kind of area, my dad passed away about 3 years ago, and my mom about 20 years ago. And so my brother and I have actually had very kind of candid and open and lovely conversations about how our literal definition of family has changed now that we theoretically are, we're parentless, we're orphans, which is just such a crazy thing to say out loud. But I think that family for me is the reason to be. And that might sound cliche, but I would tell you I don't even know how I would answer this question in my 20s, where I would talk about them as a support system, or I would talk about them as great partners or friends or people I love. But I think ultimately I was a remarkably selfish human being looking back at it, which I don't think is unusual for what it's worth in my 20s and even into my 30s. But today, you and I are having this conversation at 6:24 a.m. here in Seattle. I have a block on my calendar from 7:30 to 8 a.m. just to have breakfast with my kids every morning. And I will tell you that I am a miserable human being when that block gets scheduled over. And it happens. Life happens. Life has a darn way of never stopping. You know what I mean? But I find it to be the reason you get up in the morning. I find it to be my entire source of energy. And it's also just a remarkably humbling experience, kind of having a true family. And looking back at it with the benefit of hindsight, I probably wish I would have embraced my dad and my parents a little bit more than I actually did. We had a wonderful relationship and they were extremely instrumental in my life. But my definition of family and what it really means to me, I'd say grows every day now that I've sort of experienced the love of a child.
Quite something. I agree. I think, I've got a little more grey hair than you and started probably a little earlier.
I'm catching up.
So
I'm catching up.
So my kids are 20 and 23, but yes, I mean, certainly both my kids are left home now, but my son, my younger one, for the last 4 years that he was at home before he went off to university, my calendar was blocked out from 4:30 p.m. every day. We were either weightlifting or boxing, and then we watched TV. We had some dinner together. It became a daily routine. It's actually one of the nice things that came from COVID. So yes, it was very rare. Max twice a month, I would agree to do something in that slot because I was like, no, that is the time that I'm spending with my son. I'm available from 5 a.m, but no, at 4:30 I'm busy. So I completely get that. And what does health look like for you? Whether that be mental health, physical health, nutrition, sleep?
Something else that I've had to start caring about much more. Leo, you and I, when we were kind of just chatting before we started this morning, we were talking about the travails and stresses of entrepreneurship. I, for the first time in my whole life, I had my physical 2.5 weeks ago, and they told me I had slightly elevated blood pressure. And I'm one of those people where I know I don't know that much about medicine, but I know that high blood pressure is universally accepted as bad, right? I am very kind of in tune with that. And it turned out that was honestly just like a one-time reading because what we ended up doing is I would take my blood pressure every day and make sure that it was just a place in time, which I would encourage others to do if they ever have that reading. But I'm very fortunate where I've played athletics my whole life. I'm actually talking to you today. I played in a volleyball match last night, which I still play in a league that's pretty competitive. I work out every day, not because I feel like I need to, because I love it, right? So if you think about physical fitness, for me, I'm very lucky where I enjoy doing it and I make time for it, and it's not a hard thing to do. Now, on the negative side, if you were here in Seattle tonight, Leo, and you text me like, hey, you're around to have dinner, one of my single favorite things to do on earth is to cook for people and drink wine with people. It's just like, to me, it's just this definition of hospitality that I absolutely enjoy. And so finding balance has been key. And so for me, I will tell you that during the week, I am about as perfect of a nutrition and exercise human being and sleep person as you could think. I really optimize to it. I look for 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night if I can. I usually go to bed around 8:30 p.m. and wake up around 5 a.m. I work out every day, take my dogs for a walk, roughhouse with my kids, do everything I can to be physically active during the week. And then on Friday night, usually I give myself some grace where I'll go out to a restaurant or I'll cook for somebody or I'll spend time. But I think for me, finding that balance has been remarkably key because I was raised in the household where we were the ones hosting, right? And we were sort of, this idea of hospitality was very much beaten into us in a way that I really enjoy it. But I really look for balance. But honestly, Leo, the way I evaluate my health today is all of the medical readings that are kind of I would call them forward-looking signals. I make sure I get a good glimpse of those annually, if not more. And then how I feel, right? Because I optimize to energy more than anything on this earth, right? And I think that energy is the thing that matters more to me. And so I'd like to think I've gotten beyond vanity, but you find that sometimes how you look and how you feel can certainly be intertwined, whether you like it or not. But the number one output that I really seek in how I take care of myself is my energy level. And the moment I feel that dragging, it usually means I've gotten out of balance in one of those things of sleep or fitness or nutrition.
Agreed. The only thing I add into it is I've got my aura. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but even more data. Beyond playing volleyball and hanging out with the kids, what do you like to do for fun?
So I mentioned cooking. Cooking is a huge Zen thing for me. We have 2 dogs. Getting outside with the dogs is massive for me. And I love being outside and then travel. I think I sort of have lost count, but I'm pretty sure I've visited 91 countries at this point in my life. It's either 91 or 93. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. I I never left North America until I was 25 years old. And so in the last 18 years, I've ticked off, you know, call it 88, 85 countries, something like that. And I think kind of expanding your worldview is just one of the most amazing things you can do. Experiencing their cuisine, experiencing their life, experiencing their hospitality. My wife played volleyball at the University of Washington, and they had an alumni weekend this weekend, and she had a friend come stay with us who has been coaching in Turkey. And Sonia has a 7-year-old daughter, and she was staying with us, and talking to her about what living in Turkey has done for her 7-year-old just sort of affirmed this more global view of the world. So I would say top of my list is, frankly, absorbing myself as much as possible into somebody else's culture via travel. That'd be my number one answer for sure.
Love that. As I speak to you from Spain, I'm
Indeed.
definitely on my travel journey, especially. And how does a balanced life look for you? It sounds like you've definitely got some elements of that. So the overall balance.
So on a North Star basis, I don't think what I'm about to say is possible. So I want to be very clear about that. But I have this kind of point of view where you never want to be the person who is being waited on or letting somebody down. So my kids, for example, are they waiting on me to kind of help them with their homework? You know, coworkers, are they waiting on me for an answer? And I want to be very clear, like, it's impossible. People are probably waiting on me right now to answer and open an email. I'm not silly. I understand that. But balance for me is where you go to bed every single day and you're like, I think I did everything right today. And it's this very hard thing to being open and honest and self-critical without beating yourself up. But I like to go to bed. One of the things that I worked with a gentleman by the name of Tom Andrews, who is an executive coach. He's an exceptional executive coach at that. And Tom would ask me this one question, which is, are you doing everything you can? Which it's such an easy question, Leo, to easily just be like, yes, of course I am. Right. But you asked questions about nutrition. You asked questions about sleep. You asked questions about physical fitness. Sometimes you think about your task list, and that's everything you can. But ultimately, you know, we control so much. And so to me, balance is giving yourself an honest answer of, are you doing everything you can? And really kind of giving yep, you know what, I'm doing my job. I'm doing everything I can. And I think that's the definition of balance, because that answer should encapsulate your family. It should encapsulate your physical fitness. It should encapsulate your work. And if you can put your head on the pillow and feel that way, I think you'll find you'll have more restful nights for sure.
And, you know, at least more often than not.
Idealistic about it, right? Like, give yourself some grace for sure.
Nothing in life is 100%.
Indeed.
What for you has been a pivotal moment in your life?
There's so many. We talked about having kids. That's one. I'm going to work my way back to kind of my core answer, but I think it's easy to go to kids. I think it's easy going to marry my wife. It's easier going to find. I found remarkable mentors in my life. That, I would say, from a professional lens, Leo, would be my answer. But my answer is quite simple and a little bit dark, and it's when my mom passed away. So when my mom passed away, she died of a very rare liver cancer, and I was a kid. I was like 23, 24, but it made me realize right then and there kind of like what mattered. Also, it's one of those things where you have to grow up so quickly, right? You have to accept the fact that your role in your family has changed. Your role with your friends have changed. Your role with your relationship with your brothers changed. Your relationship with your dad has changed. And I look back at that moment, and I think it was basically my coming of age as a grown up. Right. Because I know they tell you start to enter adulthood at 18, but there was nothing very adult about my life before that moment. And it was just this lightning bolt, which caused me to sort of age in a way that I never really thought was possible. And then obviously going through it again with my dad, I was certainly better prepared. But I think for me, that moment was sort of the first moment where I started to kind of understand what I needed to do to evolve as a person to make sure I don't really miss what matters. And so I'd say that'd be my answer. A bit of a downer, but certainly one that unlocked a lot of happiness for me.
That's all part of the journey. I think the past is what defines us today. The negatives, the positives, the good, the bad. It's why I don't personally believe in regrets, because everything in the past defines who we are today.
But the regrets is a tricky one, right? Because you wanna understand and feel everything, but you also need to make sure you see it as an opportunity for growth, as an opportunity for despair. So I 100% agree with you.
By the way, probably a small regret for turning down £250 million offer for business when I was in my mid-20s. But, you know, we're putting that one aside. We live and learn sometimes. And what's one piece of advice that you could give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
There's only one, huh? Understand what you're
Two,
good
if
at.
you want.
Well, no, so I'm going to say understand what you're good at and understand what you're not. And this really, I think, Leo, encapsulates everything we've talked about, where we've sort of alluded to growth and balance and self-awareness, and we've talked about all these things. But the reason I think I'm better at what I do now versus yesterday is I know where I should be authoritative and driven and have a very informed point of view. And I know where I should be sort of like second fiddle and subservient and ask questions and try to support. And I think it's sort of this departure of ego that comes along at the exact same time as your ego sort of lessens as your kind of learning grows, right? And I think specifically of my first foray into working in fashion. I was 25 and I had absolutely no self-awareness. And I thought I was good at everything, right? And I was just a cultural disaster, you know? And so my advice to an entrepreneur, you're thinking about starting a business, just accept the fact that you're not good at everything, but double down where you know you're great. And that's what I would say, know what you're good at and know what you're not, and then surround yourself with the mentors and partners you need to kind of give yourself a little bit of, have people have your back.
I love that. Perfect. You in one piece of advice have come up with the magic that entrepreneurs need, that I think everyone needs.
And it all comes from the mistakes we make, right? So that's the idea.
Yep. And how can people find you?
I try to be the most findable person on earth, Leo. I would say that my LinkedIn is a great place to reach out to me on linkedin.com/my name, Charlie Cole. Charlie.Cole@XGen.ai is a very easy way to reach me. But it's truly the reasons I do this, Leo, is making connections with people like yourself, making connections with your audiences. I teach a lecture at the University of Washington, sole purpose to just connect with more people who are kind of coming up in their careers. So I'd ask everybody who listens to this, regardless of why you'd want to reach out, whether it's commercially, personally, professionally, please don't hesitate. I'd be happy to engage with everybody.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Leo.
And thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and leave a review.